Hello and welcome to Liberty Explored. I'm Isaac the Explorer, and today we're going to talk about the MAHA report that came out a couple weeks ago. And I've got a good video to share with you with Bret Weinstein and Heather Heyer where they go over it briefly. And this one is specifically about making our children healthy again. And this is an issue that affects all of us, even if you don't have kids. Even if you're not from the United States. While this report is specifically about children in the United States, it's really a global issue. Problems that are affecting our kids are affecting everyone around the world. It's these companies with their greedy self-interest that are driving the problem, the many problems that exist. So let's get right into it and see what this report has to say.
The MAHA report, I think it's the second of the two MAHA reports that has come out, Make Our Children Healthy Again assessment. This came out just this week as well. It's incredibly long, and I just want to share basically the four top items that they are discussing here. First off, it references Executive Order 14212 from February 13th, 2025, which was establishing the President's Make America Healthy Again Commission, which we talked about here on Darkhorse when it came out. And it says, it includes, within 100 days of the date of this order, the Commission shall submit to the President through the Chair and the Executive Director the Make Our Children Healthy Again assessment. And within 180 days of the date of this order, there shall be a Make Our Children Healthy Again strategy based on the findings from the assessment. So this is the strategy document. And it is impressive. It includes, for instance, Bhattacharya, now the head of the NIH, as one of the contributors. But here it is in a nutshell. To make our children healthy again, we must begin with a shared understanding of the magnitude of the crisis and subsequently what's likely driving it. This assessment provides that foundation, grounding future efforts in a common scientific basis that identifies four potential drivers behind the rise in childhood chronic disease that present the clearest opportunities for progress. 1. Poor diet. The American diet has shifted dramatically toward ultra-processed foods, leading to nutrient depletion, increased caloric intake, and exposure to harmful additives. Nearly 70% of children's calories now come from UPFs, ultra-processed foods, contributing to obesity, diabetes, and other chronic conditions. 2. Aggregation of environmental chemicals. Children are exposed to an increasing number of synthetic chemicals, some of which have been linked to developmental issues and chronic disease. The current regulatory framework should be continually evaluated to ensure that chemicals and other exposures do not interact together to pose a threat to the health of our children. 3. Lack of physical activity and chronic stress. I would have said chronic stress and lack of physical activity because they're not denouncing the lack of chronic stress in children. They're actually talking about a rise in chronic stress. American children are experiencing unprecedented levels of inactivity, screen use, sleep deprivation, and chronic stress. These factors significantly contribute to the rise in chronic diseases and mental health challenges. And 4, over-medicalization. There is a concerning trend of overprescribing medications to children, often driven by conflicts of interest in medical research, regulation, and practice. This has led to unnecessary treatments and long-term health risks. Now, you could argue that every one of these is so understated as to be missing what is actually going on. But the fact that we have those four things where, over-medicalization, part of that is going to be about the childhood vaccine schedule, but there's no mention of vaccines in this bullet point because there doesn't need to be. The point here is that there are these four major things contributing to the decline of American children's health and indeed of all Americans' health and, people worldwide. Poor diet, environmental chemicals, lack of physical activity, and increase in chronic stress as somehow one item, and over-medicalization. So we've got toxicants, to use Toby Rogers' word, through compounds that we shouldn't have anywhere near us from both outside the aggregation of environmental chemicals and willingly brought inside the body through over-medicalization. Both of those, that's the same kind of thing. It's just, are you exposed and you had no say in it, either because no one is regulating the stuff out of existence, or you happen to live in a place where it's impossible to avoid it, or did you have some choice? Did your family have some choice? Did they get denied the ability to say no when the doctor said you must take X, and therefore you've been toxified by being given meds? These are all things that are happening. So this report is important, long, dense, but there's one more thing here that I wanted to share, which points just a tiny bit to how this has been allowed to happen, which is a lot of good stuff here. Keep going. Somewhere. There's, okay. Well, there we go. Okay, so in talking about corporate capture and the revolving door, we have this. The pharmaceutical industry from 1999 to 2018 spent $4.7 billion on lobbying expenditures at the federal level, more than any other industry. In addition, 9 out of the last 10 FDA commissioners and approximately 70% of the agency's medical reviewers have gone on to work for the pharmaceutical industry. Because what prepares you better for work in the pharmaceutical industry than to have been working for the supposed watchdog? 9 out of the last 10 FDA commissioners went on to work for pharma.
That is so stunning. 9 out of 10. I mean, holy cow.
Yeah.
It strikes me in hearing you discuss this. Part of what we're doing in this broadcast is picking up another level of what I've called the game of pharma, right? Mm-hmm. How does the game of pharma accomplish the goal of getting us to take all of these things which may not be in our interest to take? All right. Lobbying the regulatory agencies is one thing, but they do something that you might call lobbying the press as well, right? We've talked separately about the idea that the huge expenditures on pharmaceutical advertising are not really about persuading people to take drugs. They are about making it impossible for the mainstream outlets to report on the net impact of those drugs. So that's like lobbying news firms, which shouldn't be lobbyable, mm-hmm. right? Their whole purpose is not to be lobbyable. Anyway, wow, that's just a stunning piece of information.
It is. So we have the pharmaceutical companies being heavily influenced by effectively inside information on what the government watchdog, what the government oversight is doing and how it is that they accomplish things. And you have a large part of the population of America who are so confused, so angry, so frightened by what is coming out in the media that they are proudly getting their COVID boosters, apparently to show Bobby who's boss. So this is, we have images of, all of the particular accounts have been anonymized, but pictures of people with bandages on their arm, flu and COVID boosters, RFK Jr. can get bent. My wife and I got our COVID and flu vaccines to do our part to make sure everyone is safe. We have fall 2025 new COVID updated and 2025 new updated flu vaccines. Suck it, Secretary Kennedy, COVID booster achieved. And it goes on and on and on. Some of these people aren't referencing Kennedy, but enough of them are. Here, this is what hey RFK, this is what I think of your bullshit conspiracy theories. So, and I'm just going to stop this before it randomly goes into another thing. This shows such a confusion about what it is that you should do to take control of your health. What you should not do is make a not just futile, but actually self-harming gesture in order to give the finger to someone who you have been assured is denying science, while actually trying. And this, it's been over 2 years that we have had our eyes open to what is even the case with the traditional vaccines, not just the COVID vaccines. But what is the basis for the claim that they are the route to health? The basis is not placebo. The basis is not an actual test of efficacy or safety against nothing. The basis is a test against what is probably the most toxic parts of the vaccine, almost always, the aluminum adjuvants and the other stuff that are in there, the excipients that are there. In part, the adjuvants are there precisely to aggravate your immune system. I guess I'm having a hard time understanding why that point is having such a hard time landing.
Well, I think, part of this has to do with marginalizing voices that are trying to help you see it, right?
Yeah.
You know, I know from talking to intelligent people who, for whatever reason, are on the blue team.
Yeah.
And when we talk about Bobby Kennedy, the answer is, well, he sounds like a crazy person to me. And I think the only way that he sounds like a crazy person to you is if you were allowing him to be filtered by something that wishes to portray him that way. The man himself doesn't come off that way. You can disagree with a point, but he has an encyclopedic knowledge, far more than you are, whoever it is who's judging him. And so if you basically allow the New York Times church to dispense what you're supposed to conclude, then you can end up in this place. And then you reinforce each other online by, being defiant, as if, you're showing Bobby Kennedy anything by getting the vaccine. But let me just point out the absurdity here, the thing that's really at the bottom of this. Let's agree that the only thing you as a patient should care about is net. Is that shot net beneficial for me? That is not a static target. COVID shows up at the end of 2019. Evolution happens. I would bet you every single one of the people who depicts themselves getting this booster would tell you that they believe in evolution. They're the science people, right? They believe in evolution. But as an evolutionist, I would tell you, hey, you've got a brand new pathogen, whatever its route to infecting humans was, and it certainly seems to be via a laboratory, but whatever its route, once that thing is in the wild, it is going to evolve. It's involved in an arms race with the human immune system, in which making you really sick is not in its interest. So it is going to tend to evolve, and this is a well-established evolutionary principle, it's going to tend to evolve in the direction of being less virulent. It may be more contagious, but less virulent. So that means if you were convinced on the dawn of 2021 that this shot was in your interest, you need to go back and reevaluate how good would the shot have to be and how safe would it have to be in your interest now? How many people do we actually think are dying from this disease? Right. And how many people are getting better? And how many of these boosters do you intend to have? Your protest going to get this shot is predicated on an assumption that's actually insane. Right. The assumption is that the shot is perfectly safe, so safe that you don't need to do a net analysis because there's no cost to you, and that's nonsense.
It's the same confusion. I don't want to always use this as sort of the baseline crazy example, but it's the same confusion as, oh my God, they're going to take our gender reassignment surgery rights away. Your rights? Come again? The rights of 14-year-olds to have their breasts hacked off because they've been fed a lie by people who have no idea what humans are? Like that isn't actually a right, any more than the creation of both a virus in a lab and a shot that may or may not in any way effectively engage with that virus in a lab is your right to have. And I think, I've had some conversations with people who think of themselves, are young, but think of themselves as leaning libertarian. Who say, well, but if it's there, then it's our right to have it. It's like that argument doesn't hold once you're talking about something that we have created, that is our technological invention, and especially the newer it is, the more likely there is a really good argument that we shouldn't have released it. It should not be out there. SARS-CoV-2 certainly shouldn't have been released, whether it was done so by accident, as I still presume, but I don't know, or intentionally. But the idea that anything that is created is your right to have access to, no, that's not actually the case.
No, and if that is your position, then you are effectively saying that there shouldn't be mandatory safety testing and licensure.
So there you have it. I really think this underlines the fact that health is an important issue that we always need to be readdressing. It's not a left or right issue. It is a function of liberty and freedom, and the freedom to make your own choices. And I don't argue with anybody who wants to fight for their own freedom to take any shot. But the reason this report exists, and I think those top 4 issues that it outlined against our children, those are universal. They have to do more with the problems of shareholder primacy and the fact that industries like the medical industry actually it's one of the top money-making industries in the world. And they actually make money off of unhealth, the lack of health, the disease that exists naturally. They actually have an interest in spreading it, making it worse. That will affect their bottom line in a way that's not good for everyone else. And just recognizing that is not a problem. That's also my right and my part of my liberty, my freedom, is to be able to talk about this. Now, just this last week, there's been quite an attack on me for coming out and speaking about the report that happened just about the Tylenol and autism. And people think, oh, they're yelling at me virulently, screaming at me online and trying to get me in some type of gotcha moment, whether or not I read the report or I understand something about the most common comment I had with the negative people that were coming after me was the correlation is not causation. And they're literally like texting me after I send them the report. And it's so frustrating because, yes, I did read that report, actually. I understand it very well. I understand how it connects to my overarching principle of health, and I understand exactly what that report said, which was that there was a suggested connection between Tylenol used during pregnancy and autism. Yes, it does not prove the connection between those things. However, the data suggests that, and that's why they released this warning. And even inside the report, it stated that it's still that this was done by Harvard's T.C. Chan unit or whatever through Harvard. They actually state in the report that Tylenol is one of the most safe things to use for fevers during pregnancy, and that the suggestion for doctors was to minimize usage and duration in the instance where they perceived it as being needed. Now, that's such an important clarification with something like this. Now, somebody like me, I see that and I just go, this is what I've been talking about for years. And not that I knew that there was a direct connection with autism, but that I know that pharmaceutical drugs in general are unhealthy. They should mainly only be used for emergencies and in times when you have a direct need for that particular thing. Chronic usage of pharmaceuticals is detrimental to the human body in almost all instances. Things like antidepressants are really unhealthy. They're always going to have side effects. They're bringing us farther and farther away from our own natural immunities, our own natural healing system that's built within us. I've always been a big proponent of herbs, and I have a pretty good knowledge of herbs. I think herbs are a fantastic medicine that can often be referred to in place of pharmaceuticals with much less of a negative side effect, with much less of a potential negative reaction. And if they can be used, I prefer them personally. It doesn't mean I'm trying to force that on everybody, but just the concept of fighting for the freedom for health of yourself. All these people that, like they showed in that clip, where there's all these people getting the COVID shot right now as a protest against RFK Jr. and his anti-science thing that they've been sold to think. That is just insane. That is pure insanity. And I guarantee not a single one of those people has even close to the type of medical authority, encyclopedic knowledge that RFK Jr. has. The guy's very smart. And I know that because everything that he's been saying for the past many years has been very much in line with my thinking. And not that I'm some super expert either, but I'm smart enough to know that the medical industry does not serve our best interest, that they serve their best interest, just like the ultra processed foods that have come out are literally designed for profit. That's what they are all about, right? Like an ultra processed food has been chemically engineered to create more desire, to have an end result of more people buying it and wanting it. And because of that chemical connection, it's the goal is not to make you healthier. It never has been. It doesn't even show up on their bullet list of items that they're shooting for. It's all about consumption. And in that way, I know that ultra processed foods are generally bad. Doesn't mean I don't ever go to McDonald's or something in some extreme moment of desire. It works on me too. I'm just as guilty as you all are, and I'm no better. But I am smarter if I am realizing that this is bad and you're not. I try to minimize my uptake because I understand that all corporate entities are doing this. This is across the board. Whatever the product they're making, it's designed for uptake, for consumption. The more, just like the news is designed for uptake and consumption. That's why you guys are so polarized. That's why you even fall for this crap, because the news is a built-in outrage cycle designed to feed you the things that cause the most clicks, cause the most engagement. And right now, everything has been completely turned into a left or right issue, when science and health are completely a not left or right issue. It's a universal requirement, a universal need. And I would like to encourage people to have a more healthy desire in themselves to look deeper into themselves as to how do you make yourself healthier, not just on a physical level, but on a psychological level. What are the solutions needed to fix the problems of today? How do we remove this shareholder primacy focus in all corporations and get back to a best for all type of thinking, type of goal system, where imagine if we had a medical system that was based on health, where the ultimate goal was to make everybody healthy. Essentially, they would go out of business, most of these pharmaceutical companies, because their whole entire model is not about making you healthy. It's about encouraging the types of sickness that sell their products. Imagine if we had a food industry that was designed to nourish you, where the ultimate goal was to feed people what they needed not what sold the best. And if there was some underlying governmental restrictions that helped encourage that, I think that's probably a good idea. I think that all the people that are fighting this are really, really just need to look at themselves just a little bit. Stop buying into this polarizing concept of fighting RFK Jr. because he's trying to make you healthy again and you refuse his science. The New York Times, I think it was interesting, he called it the New York Times Bible or something just there, Bret Weinstein. The New York Times is suffering from the same problem, just like all news agencies are. The real reason why Joe Rogan became the most popular podcaster and why there's a move towards independent journalism is because that's where we're going to get the most honest take nowadays. The reason I put this podcast out there, this video channel, is because the only way we can have an authentic discussion is by stepping away from the mainstream journalists who are captured, just like the FDA is captured, as they showed with the 9 out of 10 FDA commissioners all going to work in major positions inside Big Pharma. That's not a coincidence. This is all happening because of the capturing of these regulatory agencies by the corporations that they're designed to regulate. This is a epidemic of business. It's an epidemic of unhealthy attitudes driving the majority of the information that we uptake on a daily basis. And we all need to take a look at ourselves, take a look at these businesses, remember what health is, find the things that are good for us and good for our children, and stop this ridiculous laughing at each other and virtue signaling online, trying to prove that you're right. All the people who said, "Oh, I got you, Isaac. I know what you're doing. You don't know anything about what you're talking about. Correlation is not causation." All this stuff. I'm not saying that. I'm not. I'm asking you to take a second. Remember what health is. You all know it deep inside. We can all look to ourselves to find the connection between polarizing comments that serve a business interest or ones that serve your interest. And that's all I want. I want people to serve their own interests. And I also want them to serve the collective best interest for humanity. I care about humanity. I want what's best for all of us. And that means the left and the right. Although it is very frustrating listening to these left-wing nut jobs go off on me over this. Talk about missing the point. And if you can't handle what I'm saying, please unfriend me. Do it. I really don't care. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop talking about this because it's the most important conversation going on. Talking about our individual liberty, our individual health, what makes this country a great country, why the founding fathers and their documents are so important for us to reference. I care about what the founding fathers said. I care because there's a connection to individual liberty. So I thank you all for watching. Check out my channel. Please like and subscribe. Love you all. God bless, and see you next time.